I think part of why Kamala is getting so much support is that if Trump wins, that Epstein client list is going to become public.
Yes.
And some of those billionaires behind Kamala are terrified of that outcome.
This interview is a very unique one from Elon Musk. He has done a bunch of other different political interviews in the past. This one, I really want to take the time to give my viewpoints on this as somebody who's followed Elon Musk for a long time.
Yeah. Do you think Reid Hoffman's uncomfortable?
Yes. And Gates.
And Gates. And I only ask that because you just look at them and you're like, that's a nervous person right there. I don't know. I assume you know them. Yeah.
Yes. Reid Hoffman was my vice president of business development at PayPal.
Yeah.
24 years ago.
Does he seem nervous to you?
Yeah. He's terrified of a Trump victory.
Because of the disclosure that would follow?
Yeah, I think he's certainly ideologically not aligned with Trump anyway, but I think he is concerned about the Epstein situation. Something might actually, the DOJ might actually move forward.
There are a lot of videos, apparently. Those rooms on the island and I think out in New Mexico were wired for video. And
where's the video? Between Diddy and Epstein, there's probably several thousand hours of footage here.
Yeah. It's weird that the people on those videos are lecturing the rest of us about our moral failings, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird.
What is that?
Part of how they deflect attention from themselves is by criticizing the morals of others.
Yes.
It's like a preemptive moral strike.
Yes.
As I said, I think those who are saying Trump is a threat to democracy are themselves actually the threat to democracy.
It feels like we're getting to a place where the rest of us know too much. Do you know what I mean? It's easier to live in a society where you don't really know what the people in charge are doing or why they're doing it. But now, thanks, I would say, largely to X.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say that.
Yeah.
We do know a lot. Not everything, but we know a lot. And I wonder, what happens next now that we...
Without a doubt, I think a lot of the animosity that Elon Musk has towards, let's say, the left wing of the political party in the United States, I think it's definitely rooted from how the Democratic Party, specifically Biden, treated him during his candidacy. One of the things that's really quoted many times, even from Elon Musk himself, is how he was treated during the EV summit. That's one small microcosm of what it was, but it was basically a public shaming of sorts of Elon Musk as an individual, that, you know, he didn't push the EV agenda forward, so on and so forth, and it was basically stolen valor, and it was given to a whole different party that didn't deserve it. Different lawsuits against SpaceX and not giving asylum seekers the ability to join a company. Elon will talk about that a little bit later. But it's very obvious here that Elon's very upset, to say the least. Commentary around the Epstein situation, I really think the huge bummer there, the length that is taken to resolve that entire thing. It's been a couple of years now and nothing has come out of it. Basically guarantee that a lot of powerful people were involved in something like that. And to have the notion that says, hey, super powerful people are not sometimes going to do really weird stuff and just downright terrible things, I think it's naive. And who knows, maybe he could have seen this stuff personally. Maybe he knows people involved in it, right? Then one of the things that's interesting about Elon Musk is that he's part of this upper echelon of society, let's say knows people, let's say at the very least. And he's not afraid to just come out and say stuff. And leveraging platforms like X, like his own platform, is a way for him to bring that forward, what he thinks is the truth or what he wants out there, right? But it's like we only live in this situation where you have an Elon Musk type character talking about these things because of the poor job mainstream media has done covering a lot of different stories, and because of the general mistrust in the system by a lot of people. And I think the people on the left side of the political aisle would be served well by recognizing that truth, that there's a lot of people that do not trust the system. And this political cycle, from my perspective, the Democratic Party is definitely the party that's trying to uphold the system and make it better, whereas the other side of the political aisle, and I think in this case what Elon is attaching himself to, is trying to rebuild it.
We know all this. The kidnapper's shown us his face. What happens?
I think if Trump wins, we can do some house cleaning and shed light on things. All the X platform does is adhere to freedom of speech within the bounds of the law.
Yes.
And if people want to change the laws, they can change the laws. And it's like X in different countries, the censor in countries where censorship is the law. We don't try to push American laws in other countries, but we do try to stick to the law in any given country. That's what we're doing. We open source our algorithm. We try to be as transparent as possible. But those who want to push lies obviously hate truth and transparency.
Yes.
Because it shows them to be liars. You look at that, like how outrageous it was that Kamala in the presidential debate kept pushing the Fine People hoax. They know the Fine People hoax is false. Trump would never support Nazis in Nazi rally. It's absurd. And he explicitly said that in that same speech that you must condemn anyone who has Nazi tendencies in the strongest possible terms. And yet, despite knowing that to be false, the people who wrote the speech for the Kamala op-ed put the Fine People hoax in the presidential debate, deliberately lying. Again,
I think that was one of the weaknesses, big weaknesses from that debate for sure. Trump was fact-checked, or what seemed to be fact-checked, by CBS, I believe was the network. And Kamala did have a lot of situations where she was, in the best case scenario, misleading, and the network did very little to correct that.
mess up.
If she wins, how can they let X continue in its current form, in its current role in American society?
They won't. They will try to shut it down by any means possible.
What do you mean by any means possible?
Either they'll try to pass laws, they'll try to prosecute the company, prosecute me. The amount of lawfare that we're seeing taking place is outrageous. I have many examples, but the Department of Justice, for example, launched a huge lawsuit against SpaceX.
This is the example I was talking about before.
For failing to hire asylum seekers.
Come on.
Yeah,
asylum seekers?
Not asylum, those who've been granted asylum seekers. Now there's also a law called the International Traffic in Arms Regulations that because SpaceX develops advanced missile technology that can be used in nuclear ICBMs, that we have to be very careful with who we hire. We can only hire someone if they're a permanent resident or a citizen. That's what the ITAR law says. Then there's another law that says that you cannot discriminate against asylum seekers. So we're damned if you do, damned if you don't. The DOJ did a massive lawsuit against SpaceX for failing to hire asylum seekers, even though it is illegal for us to hire asylum seekers under ITAR law. This is an actual thing that's going on. And they can only do a fairly small number of lawsuits every year. So why did they pick this one?
Another thing to add on top of that too, so this is sort of the trend of Elon Musk moving away from the Democrat Party. That seems like a waste of time. And then you also have the situation with Starlink, where the government didn't take Starlink as a serious solution for broadband internet in rural areas. They instead decided to go with a much more expensive alternative that is taking significantly longer to ramp up. And from the disasters that happened with the hurricanes that have gone through in the United States, it just so happens that Starlink was able to ramp up broadband internet in those same areas that those type of programs were trying to put through, and it's working in a matter of days versus the alternative that taxpayers are paying for, not only not up yet, but also significantly more expensive. So these are just fundamental failures from the government. From his perspective, I can see why he's so upset, right? That he's being treated unfairly. Now, of course, we're not going to hear about the treated fairly stuff nearly as much, right? One of the rare moments was giving a shout out to Pete Buttigieg on X when he was very responsive to some of the problems that we're having in North Carolina blocking Starlink. So, of course, we're going to hear about the problems first and foremost. But these are, I would call these pretty egregious. It just doesn't make any sense that something like this would happen. And so if somebody like Elon says there's lawfare against me, I think he has good standing to make that claim from.
Because you're
Lawfare.
X.
Yeah, lawfare. It's like that famous quote from Beria, Stalin's chief torturer and head of the secret police. Beria said, "Show me the man and I'll show you the crime."
Exactly.
We have so many laws that it is actually impossible to do business, impossible to operate without being some law, because you have laws like the ones I just gave you where both things are illegal.
Yes, they contradict one another.
They contradict one another. It's illegal to discriminate against asylum seekers in jobs, but it's also illegal for us to hire asylum seekers.
But it discredits the law.
They just chose one. They chose the one law and ignored the other one. And the Department of Justice at federal level prosecuted SpaceX for that.
What do you think?
It's mad.
It also discredits the idea of law, which some of us want to take seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. This affects both the perception of American justice and the reality of it.
Yes.
So
what's interesting there is Elon Musk operates from a standpoint of engineering. It's very black and white. And I think what's very interesting about his current arc in this sort of political arena is that he's trying to apply that same sort of like black and white approach to executing against the law or executing in what's supposed to be the right thing to do. And when he faces these situations where maybe politics are being involved or human imperfection is being involved, it's clearly something that he doesn't enjoy whatsoever. If anything, he views it as a huge roadblock, probably to what he wants to get done, right? And I think it's always fascinating to keep that in mind because we're taking this sort of on the spectrum, super engineering equipped brain and applying it to much more emotional, human, imperfect things, right? And a lot of this, from my standpoint, a lot of this friction, a lot of this drama stems from that you have a atypical person, a typical brain that is trying to solve typical problems where human emotions and politics rule the day. It's almost like re-engineering politics.
I'm actually a big fan of the American justice system, and I think on balance, we've still have an excellent judicial system. We still have judges that care about the letter and intent of the law, not just the letter, but also the intent of the law.
Yes.
But something that people should be concerned about is that there's an increasing movement to place activists. If you look at who did the Biden administration confirm as federal judges and who are being confirmed at the state level in a lot of states, increasingly it is not judges who care about justice or they don't care about following the law. They care about social justice, not justice.
Right.
What they call social justice. Activists as judges. Now you got a real problem. If that continues, we will not have a real justice system.
Or a real country.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. Again, your purchase of X has been, I think it's fair to say, even if I hated it, I would say this because it's true, it's been pivotal in American politics and in American society. Do you think they could shut you down if the Democrats continue to hold power?
They'll unequivocally try.
Yeah.
And if they get a majority in the Senate and House and the presidency, then they can simply pass a law and delete Section 230. So simply make us liable for what anyone says on a platform with, like, at this point, almost 600 million monthly active users.
Yeah.
Which is impossible. That's like trying to regulate speech in a country.
Yeah.
So
a big country.
Yeah, you'd just be instantly bankrupt.
But I bet they wouldn't withdraw legal immunity from the vaccine makers at the same time, would they?
No, that's unlikely.
Just as long as we're withdrawing legal liability protection. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole vaccine debate is a long one. I'm not anti-vaccine in general. I think we want to exercise caution with use of vaccines, but in the absence of vaccines, there'll be a lot more, I think, people that have died. Like, we want the smallpox vaccine. That was a good one.
It seems a good one.
Yeah, smallpox will kill you.
Killed a lot of people.
It killed a lot of people. A lot of people would die of smallpox, and a lot of people would get polio.
For sure.
Yeah. We had a president who had polio.
Oh, yeah. There's still people, you meet people today in their 80s who were limping from childhood polio.
Right. It's good that we don't have that, and vaccines played a major role in that. So that doesn't mean that vaccines should not have any scrutiny. Of course they should. We should be making sure that the quality control on vaccines is incredibly good if we're giving them to children and whatnot. And we shouldn't force people to take vaccines.
That itself is a controversial statement, that we shouldn't force people.
We shouldn't force people to take vaccines, no.
Yeah. I think what's interesting there is that with the alliance of Elon Musk, RFK Jr., Donald Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy, Tulsi Gabbard, so this is sort of like a platform thing, right? Is like, hey, we're not necessarily, there's a lot of like people that think, people like RFK Jr. or whatever are just completely anti-vaccine. Look into it, that's not really the case. They're just advocating for more transparency and more safety around vaccines and really trying to poke the pharmaceutical industry, which has been known to lie and just downright abuse the American public to make more money. These are just facts, right? Unfortunately, to try and hold them accountable for some of these things. And it's just interesting how these ideas are starting to overlap.
So just to re-ask...
I believe in freedom.
Yeah, I've noticed.
America's supposed to be the land of liberty, freedom and opportunity. So that we try to, as much as possible, maximize people's individual liberty, and that we try to be a country where you succeed based on your talent and hard work.
Yes.
Those are two fundamental values. That's what's made America great. And if we lose those, our decline will be swift.
What do you... If you had to bet, does freedom reassert itself in America? or not?
That's why I think part of why this election is so pivotal. I think if we, with the Trump administration, I think we can improve the liberty of Americans. I think we need to have sensible deregulation where we keep the regulations that matter. Like we don't want to destroy important habitats or encourage oil spills or anything like that. But there are so many regulatory agencies that have overlapping responsibility that we are smothering progress. And we can't build a high-speed rail in America. Look at the ridiculous high-speed rail project in California, where they've spent $7 billion, and all they've got to show for it is a 1,600-foot section of concrete with no rails on it.
And I think one of the things that this sort of talks about is just the inefficiency of government, and talking about talent and hard work. That's something that Elon Musk, from his business perspective, I used to work at Tesla for a little over 4 years back in the day. It feels like back in the day now. You can tell that that's definitely part of the DNA of those companies is hard work, bust your ass. You'll get paid and you'll get rewarded based on your merit. And examples like these highlight that, hey, when it's obvious that our government, that leverages taxpayer dollars to raise funds to pay for these types of activities, are doing so in an extremely inefficient manner.
The picture of it online.
So it's not that fast yet. We wouldn't say it's high speed at this point, or even rail.
It doesn't even have rail on it. Maybe by now they put some rail on it, but it's this comically small section of rail. $7 billion has been spent, most of it in like environmental consulting, and I don't know where, but clearly not in building high-speed rail. There are so many different regulatory agencies and so many laws and regulations that prevent progress that if this continues, we simply won't be able to get anything done.
It does seem like the engineers are not getting rich. It's the environmental consultants, the climate consultants, the DEI consultants. A whole consultant class seems to be getting richer by the year, where people with actual skills, the ones that bring actual progress.
Useful things, products and services that you can use.
That's right.
Yeah.
So this is a trend.
Things that if you were like traveling on a desert island, you'd want those people, but you wouldn't want environmental consultants.
They seem undercompensated.
It's like you're going to starve,
though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
who are actual builders that get things done? And every year we're making it harder in America for actual builders to get things done. We're in this like weird Ayn Rand Atlas Shrugged scenario, where there's yet another regulation, yet another rule, and there's that phrase in Atlas Shrugged: "Oh, you'll manage. Oh, you'll manage. Oh, you'll manage." It's like eventually you're like, can't get anything done.
Why the hostility though toward people with meaningful skills? It's not a neutral posture they have.
Yeah.
And they're enriching themselves obviously by creating fake jobs because they have no skills and they don't have creative power. So I understand that. But why do they hate people who do have creative power and actual skills? I don't understand that.
I don't think they hate them. I think it's just the incentive structure for people to work hard and be rewarded on merit is not aligned with the goals of those organizations and the different bodies in government. I think it's less about hating. It's just the right incentives are not in place because it's hard to make those. That's what good leaders do. Good leaders make good incentives, and good leaders are rare. That's the unfortunate truth.
I'm not sure I understand it either because it's difficult for me to put myself in a mindset.
You're welcome, Elon. There you go.
Because I'm someone who believes in construction. I build things. That's what I do. Yeah. I build cars. I build rockets. I build satellite internet. I've spent thousands of hours, tens of thousands of hours in factories, building up factories. I can't really put myself in the mind of say someone who would want to do crime because I don't want to do crime.
Yeah.
I don't want to enjoy hurting other people. I don't enjoy hurting other people. So I have a hard time imagining why would somebody do that.
Yes.
In an extreme case, you can't put yourself in the mind of, say, a Jeffrey Dahmer, where you're like a cannibalistic serial killer, because you're not a cannibalistic serial killer. I don't get it.
It's not a fetish you can relate to.
Kind of extreme. Kind of extreme.
It's not. I do think this is in the sort of well-meaning sort of liberal mindset. I know I have many good friends who they have deep empathy for their fellow human beings.
Good.
And they care. But the challenge that they have is that they've often grown up in a very sheltered existence where everyone around them is nice and civilized. And they just really don't encounter people who have uncontrolled violent tendencies or like hurting people. They've just always grown up in a sort of kumbaya, everyone is nice, hippie commune situation.
Minneapolis pre-riots, yeah.
Yeah, but there's a small number of people, it's like a few percent of society that either can't have anger management issues that are so severe that they lose their temper and hurt or murder others. And there's a small, like I said, it's not a large number that enjoy hurting other people.
I think what's interesting there, as an immigrant myself, Elon Musk is an immigrant. He has a very well documented, very difficult childhood. If you read the biography by Walter Isaacson, this is like textbook immigrant mentality, where it's hard to connect with people that have lived in amazing, beautiful childhoods, right? They've been given what they deserve, let's say, they've been given just beautiful lives. And by default, when you do that, unless you go out of your way to really expose yourself to some of the crazier things in the world, then the even very mild things that feel difficult, right? Or feel evil or feel terrible, if you put it within the context of like global suffering, you're still top 1%, right? And I think from that standpoint, he makes a very good point. And that could definitely bleed into how society runs in, let's say, a first world country. I think what's interesting about that too is that that's the reason why so many immigrants do perform so well in the United States, because the United States is such an amazing country that, anybody, I really do believe this, almost everybody can become extremely successful in this country. I personally have benefited tremendously from this just because I decided to bust my ass as much as I could, and my parents set me up to be able to do that, right? When you have those lived experiences, you almost have an advantage, because what could feel hard for another person that hasn't faced that level of adversity, let's say, for somebody like him, or maybe somebody like me, or somebody who's lived through those, difficult areas of growing up, that's lived experience that gives you an edge, because then you can apply those learnings to the rest of your life. And then as you become an adult, it's hard to ignore that a lot of those things define who you are, and then it gives you the ability to process what is happening better and make better decisions because of that, in policy, in business.
And if you do not incarcerate them, they will do that. They will hurt other people. And what I see is what I call shallow empathy. People have empathy for the criminals, but not empathy for the victims of the criminals.
Yes.
And so if you simply have, and I believe one should have deep empathy to say, what is the greater good for society? Is it better to incarcerate violent criminals and prevent them from hurting people, or to let them loose and allow those people to be hurt? And I think the latter is much worse. My mom lives in New York, and my mom at this point has gone from being Democrat to Republican. And her friends in New York are having the same experience. Because you know what'll turn you from a Democrat to a Republican pretty fast is getting punched in the face while you walk down the street.
Yes. For no reason.
Yes. And then no action being taken against those who hurt you.
And that happened to your mom?
Not to my mother, but to 3 of her friends this year.
Some people blame that on illegal immigration. Some people blame that on drug epidemic and the homelessness epidemic and the mental illness epidemic. I mean, that's one of the things about the United States, right? It has so many issues when it comes to that stuff. Still an amazing country, but there are things that are bubbling up. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think in the comment section below.